Broadcasting from the Keep Moving Forward Creator Studios, it's time for the Athletes of the Titan Games podcast. This limited release show features the stories of the 2019 contestants of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's athletic competition, NBC's The Titan Games. Now here's your host, Katie Galley.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Athletes of the Titan Games podcast. I'm your host, Katie Galley. In the Keep Moving Forward Creators Studio with me today, I have Titan Games athlete, CrossFitter, and singer-songwriter Mariah Counts. How are you doing, Mariah?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I am doing well too, and I know you're getting over a cold. You're pushing through that cold, and you're still talking with me today, which is awesome.
Yes, of course. I was excited about it.
Good. Well, I'm excited to speak with you. And so to kick it off, I just have one question I ask all my guests, but where did you grow up, and how, if at all, was your childhood shaped by athletics?
Yeah, I grew up in San Diego, California. I grew up living in my grandma's house, so she was shuttling me around all my, sporting events, all my games, all my practices. I played, soccer, basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball growing up. So, I've been surrounded by sports my whole life. I had, 3 uncles, my dad, my mom and my grandma were all a really big part of encouraging me to continue playing sports and being active. And, I was lucky enough to have a childhood where I was outside all the time and, playing with all the neighborhood boys and just staying really active and getting into trouble and doing fun stuff like that. So, I've just been active my whole life, and it continued, and I set goals, and it's been a major drive in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so was there ever a sport that maybe you were more drawn to than others that kind of drove your childhood, or was it really all the way through middle school and high school you just played multiple sports?
Well, I'd say, I grew up playing baseball and softball for 9 years. So
wow.
I played baseball for as long as I could because the girls were just not as good yet. So I kept playing with the boys, and I had my uncle there to coach and help me out, when the boys were picking on me. But, once finally tried out for the volleyball team, my dad's a really incredible volleyball player. And so I kind of pushed it away my whole life and my whole childhood until I got to high school, and I finally gave in and started playing that. And I ended up loving that the most, actually. And I actually quit softball my freshman year of high school, even though that was kind of my, my vision of my future. I was thinking I would be going to college for softball, earning a scholarship, doing all that, but I ended up switching over to volleyball, and I loved it so much. And since I quit softball, it opened up the spring season for me. So I actually also started doing track and field. So I started throwing shot put and the discus.
No way.
And,
wow.
and so those two became my 2 big sports. So I was doing club volleyball, school volleyball, and I was doing track and field at high school.
So you say you had aspirations to, or you thought you would play softball at the collegiate level, and that was kind of the track that you were on. But then once you dove in with volleyball and then having that door open to play track or to compete in track, did you decide, was it just the desire to compete at the collegiate level, or was it just with softball, or did that dream form then with volleyball or track and field as well?
I don't know. It could be a combination of things, a little bit of influence when you're younger and you have, parental influence, or, from my uncles a lot. We watched like softball and we watched baseball, and it was just, I thought it was so magical, like, seeing the stadium, and I thought it was so cool. And I had watched the UCLA softball team a few times, and I was like mesmerized by it. And that was, I wanted to go to UCLA on a softball scholarship. That was what I wanted to do. And then, high school got a little political. I wasn't a big fan of it. I didn't like the camaraderie, and that could have just been my high school. But, when I was on the volleyball court, it just felt like where I was supposed to be there. So it was much, much more fun for me. It was, just a little more happening, I guess you could say, than softball's a little more of a waiting game. And then, track and field is awesome because it's just, you've basically just got to do 10,000 reps to master one skill in that sport. So I really admired the hard work that you had to put into track and field and throwing. It's very technical. And it's also a change up from volleyball. It's not as team driven. Your result is directly, a result of how hard you worked and how you're doing. It has nothing to do with your teammates. It's how hard are you going to work and will it pay off, basically. And it's a big, high pressure situation as well. When you're kind of in the ring and you have your implement and you have to spin or glide and you have to stay in your ring and you have to throw a object as far as you can. It's a very high pressure situation, and a lot of people watch, and I really thrive off that pressure. So I enjoy that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's cool too that you kind of had that realization, like you're saying, softball was more of a slow paced game, but then getting into volleyball and then track, even though track was more of an individualized sport, having the chance to really, like you're saying, when you step in that ring and having all that pressure on you, it's just you in there and it's on you to throw and with everybody watching you, but realizing that that's the environment that you most thrive in too. So then, realizing that maybe stepping away from softball was a great thing because you ended up going down a new path, but it was probably a path that you were meant to walk anyway. And so from there, did you end up going to college to play volleyball or to run track?
So I was living with my grandma. So my grandma's a huge part of, who I am today and all that. And when I was just starting my junior year of high school, she actually passed away very suddenly. So it was a really big kind of shock for me. And I was a little lost, mostly because, most of my goals were set with her. I call her nanny, with my nanny. So it was very hard for me to kind of, I guess, spend for myself. I was feeling a little bit like, the person that I've been accomplishing goals with, setting goals with was gone. So, instead of taking a turn for the worst, I kind of just dove, fully into volleyball. And it was, right in the beginning of volleyball season. And I just went all in. I had my best season of my high school career. And I told my coaches, I need to get some video. I need to, get scouted. And it was just a really rough year for me. And unfortunately, that is the year that you get scouted. And it just didn't happen how I wanted it to. I didn't get the exposure I wanted to. I was lacking motivation. Once volleyball season was over, I was lacking motivation to put myself out there and reach out to coaches. And then same goes for, track. It was just a tough year for me.
Yeah.
And then, senior year rolled around and I was kind of like, I got to snap out of this. I gotta get out of here. I gotta go, earn a scholarship. It was one of the last goals that my nanny and I had set for me, was to earn a scholarship in college. And I was like, I gotta go do it. And so I ended up, reaching out to the volleyball coach at Cal State University of Northridge. And I also reached out to the track and field coach. And I was able to set up a visit, went up there. And, I made the decision to go there because the coaches were going to let me do both sports. So when when I enrolled in college, I was a dual athlete. So I was doing volleyball and track and field, which are opposite seasons, which means I was in season the entire year.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, as a collegiate athlete, that means very busy, traveling a lot of practicing. But it was really fun. And then, but I went in there as a walk-on. So, walk-ons, they don't have to try out because the coaches want them on the team, but they don't have the money to support them or give them at that point. So it was a big part of my visit talking to them was, hey, is there room for me to earn a scholarship? Is there room for me to grow and earn that scholarship that I think I deserve? And they both, told me absolutely. So after my first year, I felt as if the volleyball path was not going to help me reach that goal. So I, made the hard decision and I quit the volleyball team, and I just stuck with track and field so that I could train with my team in the off season and, better my chances of getting that scholarship. And, the next year I got a very small scholarship, but I did earn a scholarship. And then, I just kept working really, really hard. And I was the highest scoring athlete on the track and field team my junior year. And I was able to increase my scholarship to full tuition and some, and then my senior year, I qualified for three of my 4 events for regionals. And I won the javelin, the Big West Conference javelin. And, it was a very proud moment for me. It was a really awesome collegiate career. And I actually stuck to my goals, and it was really cool to accomplish that goal that I, had set with my nanny. So it was a very rewarding collegiate career.
That's incredible, too. I mean, going back to when your nanny passed away and knowing that rather than letting it defeat you, you used that as fuel to help push you forward. And you said, you know what, I'm still going to achieve all of these goals. I'm not going to be defeated. I'm going to keep persevering. I'm going to keep pressing forward. And that's exactly what you did. And the idea that, at least for a season, but you had that opportunity for all 4 years to be a dual sport collegiate athlete. I mean, that's incredible. And then, then having the wherewithal to see, okay, if I really want to get my school paid for, have this scholarship, I need to dive into that sport that's going to bring that to me, that's actually going to have more likelihood. And so then having that decision, very difficult one, again, to pivot, to transition and say, okay, I'm going to go all in with track. And then not only making that decision, but then succeeding in such a huge way by your senior year, by being the javelin champion, and then having your whole school paid for. I mean, by having the opportunity to earn that scholarship. I mean, I love that. That's such a testament to your perseverance, and it just seems to have carried over throughout your whole life. And it's just, in that goal setting mentality. And so, but from there, I mean, that's just all of those transitions and pivots when you did finally achieve that final goal, and you achieved that your senior year and had such an illustrious track and field career. What was it like when your track career ended with college, or did it end, and that transition out of the world of collegiate athletics and into the real world? What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, it was, well, thank you for saying all that nice stuff. I appreciate that a lot. So I will say this, post-collegiate sport life is not as easy as I think people have made it out to be. Mm-hmm. I think it's something that the school and the athletic department could prepare athletes for a little bit better. I think it's very scary. I think it's hard. It's hard. It almost feels like your identity has been stripped.
Yes. Yeah.
You spend, and this is just me, I'm assuming most collegiate athletes, they've been playing sports since they were probably 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. And then, if you're, the kind of athlete that has done multiple sports, that's a solid, 18 to 21 years of, sports, competitive sports.
Right.
And then you just stop playing them, and you stop having the team, and you stop having to practice and train for 5 hours a day. And you don't have to wake up early to go to training, and you don't have a coach to keep you accountable. You don't have that anymore. So it is a bit of a identity loss. It's scary. It's, your body's tired. When I first graduated, I moved back home to San Diego for a little bit, and I wanted to CrossFit. I had gotten this front desk job at a CrossFit gym my senior year of college, and I wanted to CrossFit right away, and as a thrower, you kind of have to be a little heavier. Mass moves mass. So, I was not in the kind of shape that I want to be for the rest of my life. I was, just a little heavier, bulkier than I wanted to be. So I wanted to lean out. And so I kind of went straight into CrossFit after I graduated and moved home, and my body was non-responsive to it. It was just sore all the time. It was exhausted. It just like it was tired from lifting 5 days a week for 4 years, and and from traveling and training and throwing it over and over and over again. So that was hard for me too, because I didn't even have an outlet as far as working out went. My body was just saying no. My mind was a little sad, a little depressed, and it was tough, I would say for the first 2 or 3 months. And then finally, my body kind of started catching up with me, and I was able to start training, working out again and CrossFitting again. And I actually moved back up to LA, and I was feeling motivated again finally. I was back in it. I had like 2 jobs. I was finally started CrossFitting again. My old CrossFit job had reached out to me. They heard I was back in LA. My boss heard I was back in LA, and he called me and said, come back, come work for us. And, a year later, I earned my position as manager, and, I've been the manager for about over a year now. Doing much better. I was training competitively for CrossFit for, I think, almost 3 years. And I recently, stopped training competitively just because I was starting to feel as if there was other things I wanted to do, like, singing and songwriting. I felt like I was spending more time in the gym than was necessary for the quality of life that I was looking to have. So, but yeah, the post-collegiate life was rough for me. And then, I hung in there, and it finally cleared up and got a little better. And now, I'm happy as hell. I can't imagine being anywhere else in my life than where I'm at right now. Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, that once you leave the collegiate world behind, or the sporting world behind, like you're saying, you feel like you've lost your identity, and that transition is so hard. And it's your whole life was wrapped up in that one thing that you did. And that's where you felt your worth come from, whether you succeeded or failed at it on any given day. And just to have that stripped away from you, it's so difficult to navigate that next piece of your life. But then, recognizing that, well, you have to move forward. You have to figure out how to pick yourself back up. And then, so like you're saying, you found CrossFit and found kind of a new path there. So when you did, was it almost immediate? You said your body was kind of rejecting it. You were sore, and it was kind of feeling it from all those years of traveling and just training every day. So did you initially decide that you wanted to immediately, when you started working at that CrossFit gym, that you wanted to try and go at it competitively, or did it start off as just trying out CrossFit, seeing what it was going to be like?
I knew what CrossFit was like. I knew I'd been working there for a year, like I said, before I had graduated.
Yeah.
And my dad actually introduced me to it a few years prior to that. One summer we decided to do it a little bit. Then my coach banned me from doing it. but yeah, I mean, there's so many goals that are to be made in the CrossFit world, and I admire that. And it's really important, I think, for anybody in any aspect of life to have a goal.
Yeah.
That way you're moving towards something, not just meandering aimlessly throughout your life. And they can be small. I think people need short-term ones. I think they need long-term ones. And so I really like that aspect of CrossFit. I love how hard people work in it. I think I also really like challenging myself, and there are so many different movements in CrossFit that I am not good at.
Yeah.
So I think it was fun for me to kind of tackle all of them and challenge myself. And once I conquered one, I got to move on to the next. And once I did conquer one, I could put it in my tool belt, and it felt good, and it feels good now to say I can do all those movements and it's, I liked, the whole concept behind CrossFit is doing, functional movements. So things that, I do in the gym, they make me stronger outside of the gym. I can pick up more weight. I can put things that are heavier over my head. I can, I can climb something if I'm in a bind and I need to climb something. It's just, they're very functional things, and I admire that as well. And it's fun, it's just fun. And finally it's like having a sport, where I can have some camaraderie, and you're working in a class. And that was the other thing why I stopped training competitively, is because it's a very lonely road. It's, if you don't have a training partner that is also, maybe the same level, and you guys are training together, it's lonely, and so I started feeling like I was leading this community and I wasn't even in it. I wasn't taking class with anybody. I couldn't relate to when they talked about the workouts. I couldn't relate anymore because I was doing all of my own workouts, and it was starting to feel like the reasons why I liked CrossFit in the first place were starting to dwindle. And so,
Yeah, and I mean that's true, because I mean you found CrossFit and that kind of filled that athletic void, but I mean I think the nature of CrossFit too is that community aspect and how it helps you make friends. And it's true, I think when you graduate college, and especially if you were a collegiate athlete, nobody tells you how challenging it's going to be to actually make friends once your sport is over. And I mean, because your whole life you had an ingrained group of friends doing the same things you did, training with you did. And so I think you're right, CrossFit allows that. So then to have that again taken away because you were going all in on that competitive track, but then having the realization of it's not fulfilling that community need too. And so it makes sense. Just speaking about it being that lonely road, so it's kind of, I guess, a give and take, and what is it that you need at that time, and so trying to fill that void on either side. And so from there though, so you've always been very athletic and competitive and driven in that arena. So how did the singing and songwriting come into play?
Honestly, ever since I was a kid, I've been drawn to music in general. I'm a very emotional human being, so I've always just been drawn to music in that sense. Okay. And then, when my nanny passed away, I did use, playing guitar and learning songs and singing as a huge outlet, huge coping mechanism. So, that's where I really started to play and learn, and kind of, it wasn't really, I wasn't like, I didn't wake up one day and I was like, oh, I was meant to do this. It was honestly a coping thing for me. And the more I did it, the more I realized, it really made me feel better. It put me in a good mood. It gave me this outlet to like be in a different headspace when I was, feeling sad. So that was where I kind of started. And I wrote my first song my senior year of high school. I did our big senior project we have to do. I actually did a cover album. So wow. And when I look back, it was terrible. But but it is, it was something I was passionate about. It was something I was excited about. And I remember I did write my first original back then when I wrote about my nanny. So I dabbled a little in the songwriting back then. And then when I went to college, I thought about doing the music major, but they did advise not to do that as an athlete just because of the time commitment that both things would take, athletics and a music major. So I strayed away from it. But, just kind of throughout college, I always had my guitar with me, and I started playing more and more. And as I grow up, you grow up and you feel different emotions than you felt when you were younger. And so I was finding myself like needing to channel these emotions that I was, coming into, if you will. And it gave me an outlet, and it was nice. So, I just started playing more and more and more. And I, started realizing the more I played, the better I got, the better I sounded. And the more I started figuring out my sound and the kind of music I like and the kind of music that I like to play. So I started doing that. And then just, to be honest, I know we haven't talked about it yet, but when I went to the Combine for the Titan Games, I was so incredibly inspired by everyone there. It was so cool to meet all these people that, and I know the term successful is very subjective, but I'm going to use it. These incredibly successful people were just doing what they wanted to do. You know, they were all doing exactly what they want to do. They weren't doing things that they didn't want to do. They weren't, you know, talking about their jobs like they hate them. They were all just so passionate about what they do and what they were talking about. And I was so inspired that I was like, you know what? I went home and I just thought, like, I should be doing more music, you know?
Yeah.
Like the way that these people light up when they talk about the things that they're doing in their everyday life, like that's how I feel about music. And so I was like, God, like I should really be doing more. So I just was like staying up like night after night and writing. And I started getting together with my friend more instead of it being, you know, like a once every 2 months kind of thing. We started getting together, you know, once every 2 weeks, you know, and we're just writing more stuff. And now I have, you know, 2 handfuls of original content, and it's something to be proud of. And it's, you know, I can make goals, and, you know, it's cool. It's just something I'm passionate about, and it's not sports, and it's not, you know, it's just different. And it's such a cool feeling, and it's cool to be proud of something, that also requires hard work, but in a different way.
It's really cool that you went to the combine for the Titan Games, and then that kind of reignited that fire within you, and you decided, all right, I'm going to go all in with this, and just deciding that. And I love too that you said it was something you were passionate about, but it's not sports. And so, and you know, having your whole life, like you're saying, kind of dictated by that, because you love sports and you loved everything you did with it, and you still do, but knowing that you are more than just an athlete, and that you have all these different passions, and you can bring them to light. And so how did you even find yourself as a contestant on the Titan Games?
Yeah, well, you know, I'd seen like some sort of promo or commercial or ad online one time about the Titan Games, and I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like this is the show that I've been waiting for, you know, because like all my life, everybody is like, right, you should go on one of those shows, you know, you'd be so good, like you're so this, you're so that, you know, and all of them just didn't seem like me. They didn't seem like the show for me. You know, like Ninja Warrior and I don't know, all, you know, Wipeout, like all those shows that there was something that wasn't me. And when I saw that ad for Titan Games, I was like, oh my God, like this is me. Like this is just about being athletic and having heart and drive and just being, you know, an all around athlete. And I was really excited about it. And then I didn't hear anything, like I didn't see anything about it for months. And then somebody came into our CrossFit gym and was, you know, kind of just doing like scouting basically, and just came in and said, hey, you know, we have this show coming out. If you guys have anybody that is interested, we're looking for some more, you know, badass females. That's what they said. And so I was like, oh my God. And so they're like, yeah, here's, you know, apply online or whatever. And so I sent an email in. I wasn't even there when they came in and did that. I just heard it from one of my workers, one of my front desk girls. And so I immediately emailed in once I heard about it, and I was like, hey, you know, I would love to apply for this show. You know, I'm really excited about this. So glad you guys came into our CrossFit gym, yada, yada, yada. And they just sent me the link and said, you know, here, apply here. And so I just applied like a normal person. And, you know, and then I was so excited when I got the call. I was like, I couldn't even believe it, only because, like, you know, I don't want to say stuff like that doesn't happen to me, but it was not something that I thought was ever a thing. Cause I remember being younger and thinking like, God, you know, it'd be cool to be on TV or do a show like this. It'd be cool to like be on this huge stage for people to see me. You know, it was, I don't know. And so, that's how I, you know, and then the whole, audition process was actually pretty lengthy. It seemed like they were really serious about getting, the exact kind of athletes and people that they wanted. Mm-hmm. It was like a 3 or 4 stage, process. So
wow.
Yeah, it was, and it was, I think like 3 months long of, you know, dang, am I going to get this or not? Or,
yeah,
you know, it was very, drawn out. So
But again, you persevered, and it's cool that this opportunity even came up. But, to your point, because I was even thinking about it when you were talking about throwing shot put and being in the ring and having kind of essentially the spotlight on you, and are you going to perform? And so now having that kind of re-simulated again, but in a different way. So being a contestant on the games, being an athlete on the Titan Games, having that kind of similar situation manufactured where you knew you could thrive and you knew you could perform to the best of your abilities because you had already, it's essentially like you trained for that moment. You had trained as a shot putter, as a track and field athlete. And so you were ready when you got that call to just go in.
Yeah. I mean, it really did feel like my training had come to this huge head. It was like, oh my God, like this, this is the thing. This is so cool. And when I finally found out that I made it on, I was so excited. I could not contain myself. It was very exciting. I was excited to compete. I was excited to, I had already seen all the athletes, so I was so excited to compete against people who were incredible athletes. The whole cast was really awesome. So it was a really special experience. The whole thing was, I said it so many times throughout the experience, but it was like the coolest thing that had ever happened to me. It was just so cool. It was everything about it to how the crew treated us, how, the questions they were asking us, like, you could just tell how they're trying to portray you, and you could just tell that the intentions were so good, and that they were really wanting to, just showcase us all in the best light, and to give us this kind of exposure or platform that was so positive for us in our lives, that it was very special feeling.
Yeah.
I felt very grateful, and it felt like this kind of golden opportunity, if you will. It's very, very cool. So,
yeah, I bet. And the sheer fact that, like you're saying, the experience that you had, and it was such an incredible opportunity. But two, on that side note, like the fact that in the past couple of weeks, you said you've stayed up so late every night just writing, and now you've something incredible to show for it on, again, something that's unrelated to athletics, but something that was inspired within you because of your experience on the Titan Games. So now you went all in as a singer-songwriter. So it's amazing how it just transcends into different areas of your life, that experience that you had. And so, from that, just based upon everything that you experienced in that Titan Games atmosphere, what is your definition of a Titan? And how do you believe that experience that you did have will transfer over and carry over into the rest of your life now?
Yeah, I think, definition of a Titan, they say it all the time. I think The Rock says it all the time, blood, sweat, respect. It's kind of like, you shed the blood, you shed the sweat, and you gain the respect. And I think that's, the perfect wording for it. It's hard work. It's dedication. It's people who won't give up. It's people who continue to push no matter what their circumstances are. I met so many people there that were just had a really tough time in their life, and they've overcome a lot, and there they were at the Titan Games, and it was very cool to see. And so I really think that it's just hard work and perseverance, and the ability to be humble and also be proud of yourself.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Be humble, but you know too what you're capable of, and have that confidence and approaching it with that level of humility. So Mariah,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it too. It's shedding that blood, shedding that sweat, and then earning that respect because of the hard work that you've put in. But it's that work that you knew you were qualified to do. You knew you were capable of achieving, and you just have to decide that that's what you're going to do. And so, just from the incredible journey that you've led and how you've consistently chosen to push forward rather than letting situations defeat you, and you are a testament to you decide you want to achieve something, and so you're going to figure out how to achieve it no matter what. And so you just continue to walk through those doors, and knowing that you have so much left to achieve as a singer, a songwriter, a CrossFitter, an athlete, an entrepreneur, all of those things. But my final question for you is, what do you want to be remembered for?
Geez, that's a good question. What do I want to be remembered for? I think I would want to be remembered for, always being happy and always being positive. And when things, don't go my way or they aren't ideal, I push through it and I find a way and I survive. And not only do I survive, but I thrive. I want to be remembered for somebody that handles high pressure situations and can make it out of them, and not just make it out of them, but like I said, thrive. I want to be known as somebody who's just, a positive light and is hardworking and anything that comes with, happiness or, can inspire or motivate anybody else or, anything else, that would be very rewarding to me.
Thank you all for tuning in to today's installment of the Athletes of the Titan Games podcast. To learn more about each of these Titan athletes, be sure to check out their information in the links in my show notes. Furthermore, to stay up to date on all things coming out of the Keep Moving Forward Creators Studio, be sure to subscribe to the Keep Moving Forward podcast iTunes channel and follow along on social media, also available in the show notes. As the creator of the Titan Games, Mr. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson says, "Titans aren't born, they're made." And I hope today's story helped you realize all that you are capable of becoming if you put in that hard work and just keep moving forward.